Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of This Old Deck. So for this week's This Old Deck, I'm going to be pulling a deck down from this book, the official Deckbuilders Guide, 120 deck lists for players of all levels. And I've mentioned the two books I'm using in the very first episodes of this series. The other book, if you haven't seen those episodes, is this, which is Deconstruction Companion. Now, the first book, this came out in 1997. This came out in 1999. So we're talking about a deck from here. So what deck are we talking about? Well, we're talking about a Pox deck, as you probably noticed from the thumbnail. Yep, so a Pox deck from 1997. Now, just a word of clarification, because I haven't really properly gone through some of the nuances of this book. Now, the section I'm pulling this from is the section for Type 2, which is standard, another term for standard. The book itself has a number of sections. So, if you flick through the book, there is a section on 5th edition common decks. There's a section on portal decks. There's a section on Type 2 from which this comes. There's a section on Mirage decks, Ice Age, Classic Type 1, theme decks to do with creatures, combos, I think they call them stunt decks at that point, multiplayer decks, and then extended Type 1.5, and then finally it finishes off with a set that actually hadn't been released yet. It was about to be released, Tempest. And those sections of the book were put together by WotC, and the author didn't get to look at them until after the book had been published, been sent to the printers. So the reason why I'm raising this is 97 is a very interesting time in standard. If you just look at this article on MTG Wiki, you'll see that there was quite a lot going on in terms of deck construction rules in 97. So the period we're sort of talking about when this book was released, came out, is sometime here. Because in the book it mentions that Tempest hasn't been released at the time when the book was put together. And the reason why I raise this is when you're looking at it, and when we look at the Type 2 cards here, you will notice that this deck simply pulls from this. So the 5th edition, Mirage, Visions, Weatherlight. For the Type 2 section, they chose to not include any Tempest cards, and they saved that till the final chapter, where they had Tempest cards in the final chapter. The section on Mirage is also that I mentioned in here. There is a Mirage section specifically as well. So that was for Mirage Block. So basically there's a lot of Mirage Block decks in this book. So if you're a big fan of the Mirage Block, then it's great. But as I've said, it's got other things in there, Ice Age Block. And the important thing to remember is the Type 2 decks in here are composed of cards made up of this. So that's when we get to, you'll notice it. And I don't think I've ever mentioned that before. The book fascinates me. I mean, it's a great snapshot in Magic. Its history, and obviously when they were putting it together, they were trying to make the Type 2 section a little bit future-proof, because of when it came out, suddenly, you've lost all of these from Type 2. So it would have made the decks obsolete pretty fast. So at least, although there's no Tempest cards in there, the decks that it had quotes are still legal, and would have been legal when the book was released, right until the Mirage Block rotates out, which coincides with Combo Winter, interestingly enough. So yeah. So let's get in and get on to the main event. So a Pox deck. What does it say in the book about this particular Pox deck that might be worth thinking about? So I'm just going to paraphrase some of this. I'm not going to read it out verbatim. So according to the book, and we've got the form we've got here is the 60 card main deck, and we've got the sideboard at the time. So you're using pox to gain card advantage. That's what it says the strategy is. Seen originally as a poor person's balance, and pox was rather underestimated, like a lot of cards were in Magic when they first appeared. Now in Magic, a lot of decks around that time, were relatively slow to start, and the slower decks sort of relied on the fact that faster decks can often run out of momentum as the mid-game approaches. So with the strategy with the slower decks was a tendency to, gum up the board a little bit until such a point where the faster decks had run out of momentum, and then the slower decks could start, doing their strategy. There was also a conventional wisdom that it mentions in the description of the deck, which says if you can't weather the first 7 turns or so against a weenie deck, sorry, what am I saying? If you can, misspoke there. If you can weather the first 7 turns or so against a weenie deck, you're likely to win. Pox turns all this thinking on its head. So with the Pox deck, you'll notice that there's a weenie element. It's not like very weenie, if you know what I mean. There's no 1-drop black cards in here, 1-drop creatures, should I say. But there's a number of 2-drops here in the deck. So what you're really trying to do is, the deck initially is supported by these weenies, and you start fairly traditionally, trying to sort of swarm the opponent. But you have to bear in mind that the more you have, the more you're going to lose when you play Pox, and you'll see why in a moment when we look at Pox. So they're suggesting a good strategy for playing the deck involves keeping your commitment fairly low. So you want to start out with weenies, and then at turn 5 or 6, as your hand and your creatures start to deplete, you need to start thinking about the Pox, about the card Pox. If you've timed things correctly, and of course this deck is very much you understanding how to time things, board state, those sort of things, how to use, maybe in some instances, how to use alternate resources. You're trying to aim for your opponent to lose more than you do, because Pox is a symmetrical card. In fact, it might be easier if I just, for the moment, just go down to this section. You can see Pox here. So you then keep playing Poxes to erode the opponent's life and land, but of course including your own as well. So that's the thing. It's also saying, don't hold more than 6 cards, try to avoid playing more than 6 lands. It says ideally 3 should suffice, and we'll see where the deck has other things that are helpful there in a moment, because Pox doesn't deplete artifacts or enchantments, so yours are safe. And we've also got Neverarn's Disc in here as well to do some board wipes. So let's have a look at the deck in totality, working down from the top artifacts. So we've got 3 charcoal diamonds. So this is unaffected by Pox. Comes into play tapped. Once it's untapped, you can use it to add black to your mana pool. Play this ability as a mana source. 2 to cast. 2 disrupting scepters. 3 to cast. The nice thing about this card is the activation cost is 3, but you've got this repeatable discard. So your target player chooses and discards a card. Use this ability only during your turn, so you can't do it on your opponent's turn. Neverarn's Disc, 4 to cast. We've seen this in lots of episodes now of this series. 2 of these, and it comes into play tapped, so it sits there. But for 1, you tap it, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So it resets the board, but it blows up all artifacts, creatures and enchantments. Doesn't blow up lands though. So creature wise, and I put these in ascending order of mana. So we've got 4 black knights, two black to cast, so fine with playing a mono black deck. So 2/2, first strike, protection from white. Knight of Stromgold, 2 black, protection from white, and then it's got these additional abilities. So you can give it first strike until end of turn. You can also give it fire breathing for 2 black. It's a 2/1 in its unpumped state. Then we've got 3 Abyssal Spectres, 2 and 2 black with flying. It's a 2/3. It's a hand card. So this has come up before in an episode I did way back called No Hand, No Land. And I've since, I think, done a similar episode where I went back through the deck again. So if it damages any player, that player chooses and discards a card. We've then got 3 copies of Necrotal. So 2 and 2 black for a 2/1 with first strike, but also when it comes into play has this interesting ability, so you can bury a target non-artifact, non-black creature. And then 2 Necro 7s. So 3 and 3 black for 5/5. So 6 mana for 5/5. And then this on it, so 3 and 2 black and sacrifice a creature. Put Necro 7 into play. Use its ability only during your upkeep and only if it's in your graveyard. So that's for casting for your hand up here. 3 and 3 black. 3 and 2 black and a creature is for casting from your graveyard. Playing from your graveyard. We've also got 2 necromancies, 2 and a black. Now you can choose to play as an instant. So it's one of these enchantments, I think they're called, from Visions. If you do, you bury it at the end of turn. When you play it, choose a target creature in any graveyard. So that's any graveyard. So yours, your opponent's. And when it comes into play, put that creature into play as though it were just played, and necromancy becomes a creature enchantment that targets that targets the creature. If it leaves a play, bury the creature. So if you are playing it as an instant, then when it goes away, the creature will go away. But if you're playing it as an enchantment, then it's going to stick around. The creature sticks around. 3 dark rituals. So another way of getting mana without having to rely on land, as long as you've got at least 1 black source of mana, which you would have because of the presence of charcoal diamond. So you can see here how the deck allows you to sort of play around the disadvantages of pox. We've got 2 vampiric tutors, which is a single black, pay 2 life, search your library for any 1 card, shuffle your library, then put that card on top of your library, so it goes on top of your library. The land base is 2 Ebon Strongholds, so it comes into play tapped for black mana, but it has this additional ability which allows you to get 2 black mana out of it, but you have to sack it. So again, you get this sort of burst of mana. 2 Quicksands, which adds colourless mana to your mana pool, but you can sack it and then target an attacking creature without flying, and it gets -1, -2. And then there's 16 swamps in the deck, so 20 land in total. Then we've got 2 drain life, 1 on a black, and for each black you spend in addition to the casting cost, drain life deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Gain life for each 1 damage dealt, but not more than the toughness of the creature or the life total of the player. Drain life damages. Now it's interesting, in this particular deck I'll show you, you could pull down, so there were a couple of different, so drain life was in 2 sets in standard. It was in this, which is Mirage, but it was also in 5th edition as well. So we'll look at the 5th edition artwork and how it was sort of slightly reworded in 5th edition. We've got a single infernal contract, so 3 black, pay half your life rounded up, draw 4 cards. 3 poxes. So let's see what this does, because this is the namesake of the deck. So 3 black, so sorcery. Each player loses 1/3 of his or her life, then chooses and discards 1/3 of his or her hand, then sacrifices 1/3 of the creatures he or she controls, and then sacrifices 1/3 of the lands he or she controls. Round each loss up. So you're rounding up the loss. Then we've got 4 stupors, 2 and a black. Target opponent discards a card at random, then chooses and discards a card. Now sideboard is Meek Stone. Creatures with power 3 or greater do not untap during their controller's untap phases. 4 Death Grips, so this will go after green spells. Counters them. Another 2 Drain Lives. This is the other artwork, so that was Mirage. This is 5th edition artwork. So X Drain Life deals X damage to target creature or player. Spend only black mana in this way. Gain 1 life for each 1 damage dealt, but not more than the toughness of the creature or the life total that player, the player drain life damages. So you can see how that's been reworded there. 4 Glooms, so goes after white spells because they cost an additional 3 to play. Activate abilities of white enchantments cost an additional 3 to play, and you'll notice it's an enchantment, so it just sticks in the battlefield. Death Grip, also an enchantment, and so you can just activate this ability here to counter target green spells, so it can sit there. And then we've got an extra 2 copies of Never Arnold's Disc, so reset. And then if we're curious, that's what the curve looks like. And yeah, it's all apart from the artifacts, the rest of the cards are mono black cards. So what we'll do is we'll look at some of the key cards here, go down various rabbit holes, go on side quests, see where we end up, just to familiarise ourselves with mainly cards which we probably haven't seen before in this series. So here's Pox, originally from Ice Age, different artwork, 5th edition. It's in online in Master Edition, and it is in the Mystery Booster 2, but with the future shifted card frames, interestingly enough. Okay, so just reminding here for the rules, the losses, discards and sacrifices are rounded up. For example, if you have 5 life and you lose 2, leaving you at 3, 5 divided by 3 is 1 2/3. Rounding up to the nearest whole number gives you 2. Each part of Pox effect is processed separately. For each part, first the player whose turn it is makes all necessary choices, such as which cards to discard. Then each player in turn order chooses. Then the actions happen at the same time. Then Pox effect moves to the next stage. Interesting. A number you need to choose, discard or sacrifice isn't calculated until it's time to perform that part of the effect. For example, if your opponent casts Pox and you discard Dodecacap as part of Box's discard effect, Dodecacap will be put onto the battlefield instead of into your graveyard. Then when determining how many creatures you need to sacrifice, the Dodecacap is taken into account. So you could get some interesting interactions, let's just say that, going on with this. Okay, card analysis in not EDH Rec, I want to do Scryfall Tagger. Yeah, so ticks a number of boxes. Discard, fraction, life divider, discard outlet, mutual sacrifice, and then all these sort of things that it will do because it's doing this. So removal of land, removal of creatures, life loss. You're actually sacrificing the creatures and sacrificing the land, which obviously it is interesting because if I'm right, that's not a targeted ability. So yeah. And then we've got smallpox, which is 2 black. Each player loses 1 life, discards a card, sacrifices a card, sacrifices a land. So it's a smaller version of Pox, not surprisingly. Oh, God, I never noticed that. Look at that, that's a black cat. That's funny. I just thought that was just part of the... Yeah, now I can see it. Okay. That's pretty cool. Look at this little collar with the skull. That's funny. Huh. I wonder if I have a copy of Pox somewhere. Probably not. Rare 5th edition. I've opened a few 5th edition cards, so you never know. Yeah. Not sure. That would look pretty good on a 15 cards episode. Yeah. I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, no, maybe I'm getting muddled up here. Maybe it's more 4th edition I've opened than 5th, thinking about it. Yeah, I should look through my binder and see whether I have Pox. If not, it's not super expensive. It's not egregious. Okay, Cube Cobra. Let's just see. Oh, our old friend Braids. Braids does crop up a lot in these episodes, doesn't it? Oh yeah. Sinkhole. Some nice, very disruptive mono black spells. Okay. Him to Torak, I saw there. Oh yeah, I got black red army ants. What's this? Gate of Phyrexia. Sacrifice one of your creatures during your upkeep to destroy any one artifact. You may not sacrifice a creature that is already on its way to the graveyard. Okay. Ah, Phyrexian Obliterator. Couple coffers, yeah. Oh. Yeah, some classic mono black stuff there. Drain life. So yeah, I just in the deck I did this. I wanted to just show you that, you know, at that time you got 5th edition, you got Mirage. Both would have been legal in Type 2 at that point. But as I've said on numerous occasions, you know, if the card's legal in the format you're playing in at that point, then you can play any variant of it. So, you know, if you had 4th edition versions kicking around, you could play them in the deck because it's legal in standard at that point. But yeah, this card goes way back. And did it get errated beyond this? Let's have a look, actually. Sorcery users can be used to reduce the X part of the mana cost. Okay. You may gain up to the total toughness of the creature, even if it was already damaged. Yeah, that's an interesting thing with these cards. You have to just make sure you read them right. There's several of these drain life cards where this is really critical. So you can't drain more life than life is there, but there are certain instances where, you know, that's not always the case, or the wording, there's other cards that do a similar thing but they're worded slightly differently, so, you know, I'd watch out for that. It's a common problem. Yeah, burn the player because we're doing damage. Was it Consume Spirit I was thinking of? Yeah. So it's worse than Consume Spirit because with Consume Spirit you can actually consume more than... Let me just check this. I've got this right before I start opening my mouth. This was a number chose effects, not the amount of damage Consume Spirit deals. In case some of it is prevented. So yeah, the wording's quite different. Consume Spirit deals X damage to target creature or player and you gain X life. So number chosen for X, not the amount of damage. If the targeted permanent players in a legal target by the time Consume Spirit would resolve. The entire spell does not resolve. And what's interesting when you look at the two cards, it's often this thing of, if you look at like when they stopped printing Drain Life and when they started printing Consume Spirit, and just the sort of cleaner wording to some degree. And notice with Drain Life as well, although I don't think there's ever a... Oh, there we go. So yes, sorry, I'll take that back. There is a version of Drain Life in the Beatdown box set which has that X1 black format to it. And you can see Consume Spirit also has that format. And it never would have been any other way. Okay. Yeah, the nice thing about this is we're going to get the usual suspects. We got Bad Moon. Oh, I'd love this card. Target creature other than sorcery becomes 0/2 until end of turn. Pretty expensive in its original form, but you know, you can always buy a 4th or 5th edition one if you just want to play around with it. Infernal Contract. Okay. If you attempt to halve a negative life total, you halve 0. This means that life total stays the same. A life total of -10 would remain -10. I think, well, how would that happen? Well, you've got some cards in Magic which sort of stop you losing the game, regardless of your life total. So yeah, it's possible for your life total, because you'd still be monitoring it. Yeah, so... And it's funny, you don't really think about things often like that until these sort of cards come up. Life Divider, Life Payment. Similar to Cruel Bargain. Okay, so 3 black, draw 4 cards. You lose half your life, rounded up. It's interesting how this is round the other way. If we look in a moment, I'll just go back and see whether this has been swapped round in the errated version. Peer into the Abyss. 4 and 3 black, target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in the library and loses half their life. Round up each time. So yeah, we've got some number of variants of this. Yeah, so it is swapped it round like the other cards. So draw 4 cards, lose half your life, rounded up. Oh, I don't think I looked at the Cube Cobra stuff. Let's see what we've got. And there's Necropotence again. Good old Cabal Ritual, Grim Monolith. Oh yeah, Exhume. That's pretty classic artwork. Gary. There's Pestilence. Is that that's the newer Dark Confident artwork, isn't it? Not sure. Oh, Mind Sword, yeah. An Icequake. This is an interesting... there's loads of really interesting legends that crop up around this time, outside of the Legends set. So this stuff, 6 and 3 black, 6/5, flying, trample, protection from black, first strike when attacking, Spirit of the Night is unaffected by summoning sickness. Number of different dark ritual artworks over the years. Oh, this used to crop up on quite a bit of just general magic artwork in the day. In fact, it's on the cover of an early Magic the Gathering encyclopedia, from what I remember. The very first one has that on it. Don't you just love looking at cubes? Just by their very nature. The sort of cards that are in there. Stupor. Target opponent discards a card at random and chooses the discarded cards. Reprinted 6th edition is cropping up on the list and was in the Time Spiral Time Shifted slot as well. That's quite a nice version of it. The Foil Arena League 2001. So, not too egregious actually. The artwork looks pretty cool. It'd be cool to see that, I think, in paper. Oh yeah, Mind Rot. Target player discards 2 cards, and Mind Twist, which has very disturbing artwork, I think. X in a black, target player discards X card at random. That is banned in Legacy. Where's the other? Wow. It's Magic Online promo. Was that ever printed in that form? I don't think it was. Pretty, yeah. So this card is better than Mind Rot, but worse than Mind Twist. So, oh wow, look at all this stuff. Oh yeah, it's got all the lots of classic disruption here. Oh wow, plenty of choices for you. No hand, no land toolkit. That's clever. I've got the mirror there for divination. So many of these. Yeah, oh, that's the one, yeah. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah. Very creepy. Just giving everybody watching this nightmares, sorry. Oh, Necromancer. Oh, it was in here. For some reason I thought this was much more expensive, but anyway. Yeah, again, very useful here with the rules, because you can imagine yourself getting in a bit of a mess with this card. I'll include links to all of this stuff as well, so you can go through, because I'm obviously not able to go down every single rabbit hole. Notorious templating. That's funny. I don't think I've seen that tag before. Oh, I like that. What was that printed in? That's a shame. There's no real cheap version of that. Animate Dead as well. Yeah, some of this stuff. There you go, similar to Animate Dead. So when did Animate Dead appear? Oh yeah, kicking around since the early days. It's interesting, isn't it, the gap here? So we got it, and then I remember this. I think this was one of the reasons why I had trouble getting hold of these because I was trying to buy the Premium Deck series, and I remember for some reason when the Slivers one came out, it didn't sell at all well. I don't think. I don't know why, and I can't remember timeline-wise whether it was before Commander really sort of took off, like, you know, EDH became Commander. So I don't know how many people were building like sliver decks anyway. And there was also the red deck that came out, the burn deck. But then this one, people at my local game store were buying multiple copies of this just for the foil reanimation cards that were in the deck. And yeah, I had quite a lot of trouble getting hold of a copy of this deck. And it was funny because as a consequence, I think the rest of the cards, or a lot of the cards from the deck were ending up in the shop's binder, you know, where they sort of exchanged it or sold it back to the shop. Oh, that's a cool Judge gift card. It is in 4th edition, by the way. I think I have a copy of it like this, or one of these. Yeah. But yeah, a number of very interesting, you know, animate cards. But with this one, you know, you have this very interesting what they call enchantments, I think is the. Does it actually say it's part of a cycle? Enchant change. No, I'm sure there was a cycle of these in one set. Intervening if clause. Gains flash. Oh, yeah, okay. That's another way of thinking about it, actually. Gains flash. Disrupt. Oh, I forgot to look here, didn't I? Oh yeah, tons of graveyardy stuff. I think I've got a nice full version of this actually. Oh, I remember when this came out, One Coil Engine. What was that? These Scars of Moving, that was it. It was $11. What's the cheapest copy? It was in the 2014 deck then. Yeah, Snapcaster Mage. Something very weird happened, I seem to remember, when I was opening packs of Innistrad, is I got several copies of this, like way above, you know, what you would think would be statistically significant. I don't know if that's the right word, or probabilistically what you would expect. Disrupting Scepter. You can use it on yourself if you want to. Yeah, so if self-mill's a thing. So we went on seeing this for a while. 9th edition, and then it was in those anniversary ones. But it's been around for a long time. If you go back, there you go. Although with slightly different artwork. So, if we go down here, what can we see? Oh, of course, yeah. So that draws a card. It's considered to be the mirror. Centrifuge. I remember this one. So that's one in a black. Everything a magic. Yeah. What sort of things are we going to come up here? I'm assuming it's going to be hand disruption again. Just go into the synergy thing. We might see more of that, I think. And there's Abyssal Spectre. Lots of really interesting tomes. Maybe I should do a Scryfall Shenanigans episode on tomes. I'll have to check, see how many there are. I like this card. Uncle Istvan. That's one of those cards which you think should be a legendary, but it's not. Abyssal Spectre. Yeah. I love this version of the artwork, and it was interesting when I looked through this because I believe it's only the core sets, so the 5th and 6th core sets that have... Hang on, what am I saying? Yeah, 5th and 6th that featured it. So it's nowhere can I see it in a black border. I mean, this is pretty cool artwork here. This was one of the masters. But I actually do prefer this from the original in Ice Age. And it's a shame it's never sort of been reprinted with that artwork. I mean, this artwork's not bad here, but I just something about this I really like. Yep. Remember the Saboteur thing. Affects the trigger when you deal combat damage to an opponent. So anything that does that is referred to as a Saboteur. Evasion, discard. So no doubt if we go into Cube Cobra we'll see the usual suspects. What do you reckon? Oh, there's Icy Manipulator. Dark Banishing. Oh yeah, we've got some classic cards here. There's the Typhoid Rats down there. What about the synergistic aspect here? That's quite an unusual Holy Strength artwork. Or different than from what I'm used to seeing. Or should I say familiar with, yeah. Oh, Sorceress Queen again. There's a Raised Dead. That's pretty creepy. so this, if it looks a little bit weird, these are these interesting cards. So I think I've got this right because I've opened some of these. When they created the theme decks for Cold Snap, they wanted to include, because of the way they sort of made up this story about Cold Snap being a sort of a forgotten set that was really supposed to be part of Ice Age. So the Ice Age would be Cold Snap, Ice Age and Alliances, and the other set that was in there wouldn't be there. So when they printed the theme decks, what they decided to do is they wanted to include cards, not just the Cold Snap cards, but also cards from Ice Age and Alliances. So what they opted to do is put them in the border at the time, which is the modern border, and then also you've got things like, you know, rarity indicated on the set symbol, which wouldn't have been a thing when I say Alliances was around. It would have had the Alliances flag, but it wouldn't have been color coded for the rarity. So it's always interesting when you see these. It's an Alliances card, but it's been represented in this border frame, and this would have come from, as far as I know, they were only printed. So there's the original from Alliances, and there's the Masters edition. So you don't see it listed here. I thought, where's it coming from? Well, yeah, it's from whatever deck this was in the Cold Snap decks. So one of the Cold Snap theme decks. And then finally, Necrosavant. So was in Dominaria remastered with this interesting artwork here, which sort of seems more representative of its size, and thematically it sort of looks cool. The ability is activated while the card is in the graveyard. Yeah, you've got Chronosavant. Reference by. Okay. So was that? I'll have to check here. Oh, if it had been a colour shifted one, it would have been different border, wouldn't it? So yeah, it's not considered to be colour shifted. Yeah, and the activation cost is different. Or I won't say activation cost. What are we seeing? Cube Cobra. Yeah, so very similar to what we've seen so far. So a lot of, mono black disruption, reanimation. Yeah. Synergistically. Yeah, so there's some interesting things you can do with this because, maybe, so you got a 5/5 here, maybe you just don't want to pay any cost. So, you could discard it from your hand as part of the process here, and then necromancy back out, so it would be cheaper than either of these. So cheaper than if you cast it regularly, cheaper than if you casted it from your graveyard, although it just says put it into play from the graveyard. And so this is these sort of cards are super interesting like this. So in terms of how can you play around a bit with, cards that at the time, it's like a 5/5, it's a pretty powerful card. So how do you get round or, get it out for less than either 6 or if it's in the graveyard anyway, 5 and sacrificing another creature. That's pretty cool artwork. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about things like Fumarole. Another card that'll blow up a land. And Crypt Angel. Let's reanimate. Put target creature card from ground on its battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its convert bane. So yeah, this is the only problem. If you use something like this, it's going to cost you 6 life, as well as that single red mana. There's another card from that premium Graveborn deck, Entomb. Doesn't mention it here, I don't think. Yeah. So there we have it. I really enjoyed that rather relaxed look through the Pox deck. I'll include links to all of these, including a link to the deck, so you can go through and amuse yourself with nostalgic cards and artwork. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.